Good morning, everybody. I'm Larry Weissoon. If you enjoy real-world hunting and fishing talk, you're really going to enjoy listening to my good friend Luke Clayton and his guest for the next hour.
This is David Fox, and welcome to Outdoors with Luke Clayton and Friends. Luke has been a recognized outdoors writer for the past 3 decades and writes for a host of outdoor publications. Luke pens a weekly newspaper outdoors column that appears in over 40 Texas newspapers. Luke is on the pro staff of Pyramyd Air, your one-stop shop for everything air gun related. Smokin Tex electric smokers and AGM Global Vision, maker of an awesome line of thermal hunting scopes and spotters. Feel free to contact Luke through his website, catfishradio.org. Now let's join Luke and his guests for this week's show.
Well, thank you, friends. You know, last week, Larry and I were talking about finding a new deer lease. We shared some experiences that we've had through the years finding a place to hunt. This week, we're going to talk about, once you get on the ground, some things that might help you in scouting a deer lease. And Larry, thank you for being with us. I know here a week or so ago you was all over. You were out to Reno to an outdoor show, and you're back home now, but thanks for being with us again here.
Oh, Luke, it's such a pleasure. And before we get started, we need to thank DSC, Conservation, Education, and Hunter Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Mossberg, that's made here in Texas with their rifles and shotguns. Also made in Texas, of course, is the VINEYARDMAX that you and I use. And I want to come back to that in just a little bit as well, too. But also, like the Stealth Vision, made it over in Crockett. I tell you, the finest optics I've ever run across. And Rossi and Taurus, the makers of the handguns that I use in the lever actions as well. Before we get started talking about a lot of that, things, I want to remind folks that we're getting on to chigger and tick season, and that being the case, an old friend of ours, yours and mine, Jim Zumbo, has told me several times I'd rather fight a sow grizzly with a sore tooth and 2 cubs than get into chiggers. And the best thing you can do to prevent getting into those things like that is to run down somewhere to one of almost a lot of outdoor type stores. They carry Sawyer's permethrin. Spray your clothes down with it. It'll last about usually about 3 or 4 washings. It'll keep the chiggers off of you. It keeps some ticks off you as well too, and that'll help you hopefully never having to deal with the Lyme disease thing that's becoming very prevalent even here in Texas. Yes, it's the time to go look at those hunting leases, or look at that lease that you're considering, or even to do some scouting on places that you've maybe been hunting for a long time. But right now is a great time to do that. And when I started doing all this, Luke, I had a little map that I'd hand draw, and I'd make a little mark here where there was a trail, where there was water, where there were rubs, where there were scrapes. But now with apps like Huntstead and some of those others like you use, it sure made things a whole lot easier, and a whole lot easier to find back to those spots as well too.
You're exactly right, Larry, and I'm the same. I ran a field crew, a survey crew for a quarter of a century, and back in the day, really, where compasses were, we used just a handheld compass, a lensatic compass, a lot to get around, tracts of land and stuff before we broke out the theodolites and the transits and did some serious surveying. But I did the same thing back in the day, Larry. I would always reference, say there's a road. Most leases are going to have a road of some sort, a straight road in front of your lease. I would just take a bearing on that, and then 90 degrees off that bearing, whatever it was, I'd know what bearing would take me 90 degrees to the road, and I'd go back, walk back in there, and then kind of roughly use my compass and pacing, and I'd grid it off and, say walk down 300 yards and then go back up and follow that back bearing back to the road and just kind of zigzag around. And you could get a pretty good handle on where you were just as far as the terrain goes, like that. And you still can. But like you say, Huntstead is I've had it on my cell phone for years. You don't have to, as long as you got a signal, you don't have to worry about a compass so much. I still use one a little bit for different things, but you know, you can just, what I'll do, and it works really well, Larry, is go to Hunt Stand and go on the hybrid feature, which shows the topography on the land, and I'll say, you'll spot a creek or a pond or something, and I'll plug in a spot on it. I'll mark that spot before I ever even get on the land, and that will get you there. I mean, once you get on the land, you can follow that. It's GPS actually, but you can follow that to the coordinates that you've marked on your hunt stand, and like the corners of the property. I'm not talking survey accuracy, but you'll see the fence corner, or whoever you're leasing the land from can tell you where it's at on a map like that, and mark the corners, mark geographical features that you might want to find and scout, and then just get out there and put some legwork in, Larry. And I know you and I are going to be doing some of that on a couple of properties before very much longer,
Absolutely, we are, Luke. You're right. Technology has come such a long way. I'm still kind of old school. I'll use that occasionally, but I'm still like drawing hand maps and all that kind of thing. I guess just something that I've done for so many years. One of the things that I'm going to be looking for, of course, I want to try to learn everything about the property. Any game surveys that were done in that area where I've got an idea as to kind of what the buck to doe ratio is there in that basic area. Also, what kind of fawn survival rate they've had. Because me particularly, I like to hunt deer that are basically old, to be honest with you, and so I want to know what kind of fawn survival rate they've had in that area, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Because if there are very few fawns that survived in those for years, like say in year 5, there are not going to be very many 5-year-olds, because by the time you add in natural nutrition and then also a little bit of hunting pressure, there's not going to be that many of those older deer. So I really want to know what kind of fawn survival rate I had in those past years, so I can have a more realistic look at what my expectations might be. Then too, there's so many things that you can do. I'm always looking when I'm out and about. We're still early enough to where you can see where there were scrapes. I want to see what kind of scrapes were. And we're talking about the overhanging limb, with the deer pawing out the area underneath kind of thing. I look for those kind of spots. And if I'm using Hunt Stand, I'll make a mark there. And same thing with rubs. Now, with rubs, there's all kinds of different rubs. There's some kind of rubs where deer just walk up to it, hit his horns a couple times, and then he's gone, never go back again. And then there are others to where the type of rubs that I look for, two things. Generally, bigger bucks rub on bigger trees. Not always the case, but it does kind of have a trend that way. Then two, I want to find those rubs that have been used year after year after year, where you can see where, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, or even farther back, the deer has been rubbed on there. It's kind of scabbed over, or the trees kind of formed around again, and then there's some more rubs. Those are the two things that I'm looking forward to, and when I'm out looking, and then of course shed antlers as well too.
You bet. Yeah, that's the thing. I believe is just nothing beat Hunt Stand, any app that you can find or technology. It's really, really helpful. It is for me now, but there's nothing really replaces just good old knowledge of the ground, being out there on foot, looking things over. There's a lease, good friend of mine, and you spent some time with Jeff Blankenship yourself there. We did on his Broken Stone Ranch there in near Grand Saline. Great guy, but he's got some property over near Kemp, and 175 acres, and he's actually turned it over to me, the hunting on it, and you and I too, you'll be there. And I've been there on the ground. It's been over a year, and you forget little idiosyncrasies or whatever, little spots and things. But I've logged it in on Hunt Stand back when I was there, and
Right.
And it just, I pulled it back up and started studying the map, and it's just crystal clear. But that's a spot where what we're talking about scouting is going to be really, really helpful for you too when you get there on the ground, because I already know where to go. I know the spots,
Yes, sir.
the creeks and the corners. I know how to find just about anything on there. So that will be very, very helpful too. I think incorporating, like you said, the old school stuff, which we both still do, and this modern technology is going to be a big help, I think, Larry.
It is. Of course, a lot of people use trail cameras and all those kind of things. And I'm glad they do. With me, I like being surprised,
Yeah.
to be very honest with you, when you get right down to it. But also, VINEYARDMAX, we've talked about them in the past. That's a great way, too, even during the springtime, to put out a little bit of VINEYARDMAX and, put up a trail camera. And had we talking about a little bit where most of our bucks were losing their antlers or have lost their antlers pretty much by now.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did on a couple other places is just kept the VINEYARDMAX out. And interestingly, those bucks keep coming back here because they're trying to repair and all those kind of things coming out of the rut. So they're hungry when you get right down to it. And quite often by using that VINEYARDMAX, you can probably have a pretty good chance maybe of picking up some shed antlers because those bucks are going to be in that area, immediate area right there. So kind of a tip for next year for the folks that, want to try to find some shed horns.
Good tip, Larry. And you're right. For instance, VINEYARDMAX, folks, you've heard Larry and I talk about it. We both believe in it and we use it. It's a great dried hammer-milled grape hulls, grape skins, if you will, rice bran, and corn chops. Deer, they can smell the aroma from those grape skins. They from a long way. We know this because we've used it out in West Texas where there are no grapes and every place,
Exactly.
other places, Larry. But now, okay, so just compare. Okay, say you want to find out if you want to put a trail camera up and look and see what's there. Okay, you put out corn. Yeah, eventually they're going to smell the corn. And they're going to be on corn. Any deer hunter, anybody knows anything about deer knows that they will be there, but they might not be there for a while. But if you put out something like, or I won't say something like, you put out VINEYARDMAX with that grape aroma, they're going to be there as soon as they can sniff it, and they're going to sniff it quicker, than any other kind of bait. That's where it comes in handy, Larry. I think, put it out and put some. I like trail cameras, but I'm like you. I get disappointed. I think the infrared light may not work at low light. You may not know what's there. The trail cameras are not infallible. That's for dang sure. But
no, and two, there's a lot of movement of deer through areas.
Yes.
Unless you've got just an ungodly huge ranch, and I've followed bucks during the rut purposely to see where they came from or where they went. And I followed bucks as long as 12 miles. So, there can be a lot of movement just so when you talk about trail camera, that buck, it may be one of those that just came through that one time as well, too.
Exactly.
So if you don't see them, don't be too disappointed, if you do use the trail camera thing.
You bet.
But right now, again, is such a great time to do all that. Get out there and there's most of the places that I deal with also have water, so there's fantastic fishing to be had as well too.
Exactly, Larry. Well, we're about out of time for our campfire talk segment, but I was just thinking, you and I both combined, God only knows how many outdoor adventures we've had. Some downright funny things has happened to me, and can you come back at the end of the show? We'll have a little time left, and it's on today's show, and let's tell our friends, share a couple of funny happenings. I think we'll have time to do that.
That sounds like a winner to me.
Folks, I want to introduce you to VINEYARDMAX. Now, this is an awesome deer attractant, a food attractant that's made with hammer-milled grape skin, dried hammer-milled grape skins. It has a mixture of rice bran and also corn chops. Very effective. Deer can smell the scent of grapes from a long way, and it brings them in. I've used it in West Texas out with Larry Whitesoon, and We were out there where deer are not even exposed to grapes, and they came right in. Also, VINEYARDMAX has a very good line of game and fish feeders. Check them out online, vineyardmax.net. Friends, I want to tell you about an awesome camping destination, Wind Point Park on Lake Tawakoni. It's over on the far east side, kind of the northeast side of the lake. It's a pristine park. You can go there and view, I think they estimated a couple of hundred deer on that couple of hundred acres there. Cabins, beautiful RV park, fishing piers, docks. It's got everything you'd want in an outdoor destination. Check them out online at windpointparktx.com. Well, friends, Mr. Larry Weissoon is going to tell you about the finest hunting optics that we have ever found.
Look, these are called Stealth Vision. They come from Crockett, Texas. Dr. John McCall developed them. They're 34 millimeter tubes as opposed to the narrower tubes, so more light transmission. They have a little green light that comes on. That scope is leveled because that's when you want to pull the trigger. They have an optional lighted reticle as well too, and a whole lot of other products. And folks can learn more about them by going to stealthvision.com.
Folks, this segment is made possible by Smokin Tex electric smokers that I've been using a long, long time, CatfishPro catfishing baits and catfish supplies, Ultrimatic Feeders, and AGM Global Vision, maker of the spotters and thermal scopes that I hunt with. Well, friends, you know, it's time to talk some catfishing. I was talking some creek catfishing last week, and that's fun. But in my opinion, there is no lake in the state of Texas, I'll make this comment, like Lake Tawakoni when it comes to catfish. It is just a catfish hotspot. Now, David Hansen is the most veteran catfish guide, I'm quite sure, on Lake Tawakoni. David, I fished with David for I don't know how many years, 20-something, 25 maybe. David is our guest. We're going to talk about the catfishing that's going on right now at Lake Tawakoni. David, thank you, buddy, for being with us.
It's my pleasure. You know, always, Luke, to get to visit with you anytime and anywhere.
Yeah, whether it's on the water or on the radio or whatever. We've had lots and lots of good times together, caught a lot of catfish. And I keep up with you, Dave. Facebook is a lot of people frown on Facebook, but there's some negatives to it for sure. But it's a great way to see what's going on with a lot of people. I've been seeing these pictures, David, of piles of catfish. You know, you and your clients out there, and you fished. You know the history of catfishing at Lake Tawakoni better, as I'd say, better than anybody that's active today that's still fishing it. And it appears to me to be as good or better than ever from the results, you know?
Well, Luke, you know, I like to say I've been fishing this lake my entire life, grew up fishing with my daddy when there was no blues in the lake at all. Started catching them when they started putting them in here, shortly after they were fingerlings, catching 60-pound fish in 10 years to, up to 80-pound fish, through 84-pound fish through my career. And it's just the most wonderful thing for me because it's 12 miles from my house to this water. And I can go down there and take my grandson this evening and put him on a 50-pound fish within 2 or 3 hours most times. And it's so exciting to me nowadays. I took some time off.
Yep.
And nowadays I have got that excitement back. I'm seeing things that were happening 25 years ago with these fish. And the numbers of fish from 10 to 20 pounds have increased tenfold in 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in saying that, there had been a rumor that the lake was fished out. And I have to say, rumors are lies. And this lake is still the best fishing blue cat lake in this state by far.
I agree with you, Dave, and people that are knowledgeable. I'm not. I've had the privilege of fishing with you and people that are professional fishermen. I've always said this as an old outdoor writer. Yeah, I know how to catch fish, but I'm not rigged up for drifting in the deep waters, all that kind of stuff with a boat. But I fish with you guys that do it for a living, and I did a very in-depth fishing tips thing for a big newspaper for 14 years. And through those years, I learned patterns. I really did. I'd be talking to people all over. And I will make this statement again. There's some great lakes in Texas to fish for blue catfish. Lake Waco, Texoma, Ray Hubbard, Levant, Tawakoni. It's the mother of blue catfish hotspots, in my opinion. So right now, I mean, is fishing best, or I don't know if this is a good question or not, but shallow or deep or both? I bet you're gonna answer both, but I don't know.
I'm finding fish the thickest in 20-foot and water and less.
Mm-hmm.
You can drift in the 20-foot range and catch fish from now till hot weather. You can fish shallow water, you'll catch fish. Intermediate water between the two, you'll catch fish. I'm seeing good action as shallow as 1.5 foot of water. So, the patterns are the patterns that they live by. Spring, they do this, and that's just, you follow it. And the thing that most people rely on that I do not use in shallow water is anything but my GPS. I do not use a side image. I don't use down imaging. I use knowledge that I've gathered over the last 30 years of fishing for them. People look at me like I'm crazy. I say, there's one right there. I can see the fish. People think I'm crazy. I had a guy look at me and he said, yeah, right. I said, stop right here. Within 15 minutes, we put a 50-pound fish in the boat.
Dave, a lot of that is based on 30 years of experience. I know that, yeah. Yes. So, your brain is saying, wait a minute, I remember 15,000 times I stopped right here, and it had this time of year, in your subconscious, that's what I'm thinking. You say, wait a minute, I'm gonna give this a try. That's what it all boils down to,
Absolutely. I mean, and some people say I'm real lucky, but I don't, I'm just that guy that you go hunting and fishing with. I'm going to kill something or I'm going to catch something, by golly. Nobody else will, but I will.
Well, you give it your all. I know that. So let's talk about a rig for, say you're going to fish water 5 foot or less. Are you going to use a Santee type rig that floated up off bottom?
Absolutely. Use a Santee rig, shad, cut any type of legal cut bait will catch fish. Right now, I think they'd bite a weenie.
Yep.
You put anything out there.
Yep.
But the consistency of the bite, if you're not catching a bunch of fish when you stop in your first spot, move. And you don't have to move 100 yards.
Yeah.
And, try to fish around some structure, look for, maybe the cormorants. That'll really help people. Just nature's own nature will provide you where the fish are at if you'll watch.
That's it.
If you'll watch it. And you'll see them old pelicans over there, boy, they all swimming around and working in motion. They all sticking them heads up. Well, you better, that's a pretty good idea right there,
A good
better
tip.
go check. But you can throw this rig out and use that same rig in 20 foot of water. And if you want to drift, just change it up to your drifting weights. Use the same rig, drift. And you'll catch.
You bet that floater on a Santee rig, it's just it's golden. I mean, it keeps otherwise the bait would just be dragging along the bottom. So pulls it up, it makes sense, doesn't it? And also these catfish feed by smell, and I've fished with you lots of times, and during periods when they're not on a red hot bite, but if you know what you're doing, you can catch them, and they'll feel a little tap 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 when you're drifting, and tap tap tap, and all of a sudden that rod's bent over to the water, and you've hooked up with a 30, 40, 50 pounder. I mean, they trail it, don't they, on when you're drifting? That scent.
Yes. Yes.
And,
They have the same smell as a great white, sense of smell as a great white shark.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's 1 part per million on water traces, or of blood trace. 1 part per million is the size of an Olympic sized swimming pool.
Okay, yep. Wow.
So they can smell it from, you get downwind, they'll come to you,
and
or they'll come up to you,
That's why that Santee rig is so good, because it's up off the bottom and it's leaving a scent trail. But probably not just drift fishing, but when you're on anchor or whatever, tied up or whatever, same principle, because it's up in that water column, and there is current in the lake. People don't realize that, but there is. I know that, and I know you know it, but it's that water's moving that scent around. That's awesome, Dave. So, we're coming up into April. Are you expecting? I've already talked to you. I know you are. This bite, it shouldn't cease come April and on into April. I'm thinking it's going to continue.
This bite will continue through the end of April, and then during this process, and it's already happening, if people are more interested in catching, eating size fish, you can pull out on them windy points and set up in there when that wind's been blowing like it's been blowing lately, and just fill your cooler up with them eating size fish under 10 pounds.
You're talking old Luke's lingo right now. I don't know how many times I've told you, hey, Luke, we might be able to get a 60-pounder today. Okay. I've caught the biggest one I ever caught, folks, was with David Hansen, 53 pounds. Now, okay, I love that, but you give me a chance to catch a bunch of them fish, I'm going to tell you, a 10 or 12 pound catfish, that's a big catfish. It is.
Yes.
But yet you can eat them. That's what I like.
Yes.
That's what I like about it. David, let's hook people up with you with a phone number. And folks, this is David Hansen here down at Tawakoni, if you just happen to tune in. And if you're listening to, after this airs on all of our great radio stations, if you're listening to a podcast, Lake Tawakoni is about an hour east of Dallas, and it is chock full of catfish. David, how do they call you, buddy?
You can reach me anytime at my cell at 903-268-7391. And my April is looking wide open right now, so better get it while it's hot.
Thank you, David. And who knows, I might be, if you ever get a slack morning or 2 hours in the afternoon. Sounds like it doesn't take long to get a good mess of fish right now.
Let's throw this in there. The afternoon fishing from 11 o'clock till 5 o'clock is the best fishing of the day right now.
Look out. That's my kind of time. David, thank you a lot, buddy, for all the info.
You betcha.
Folks, I want to tell you about an awesome destination for camping, just a getaway place, some very good fishing up on the upper end of Lake Livingston. It's River Rat Resort. You can go online to riverratresort.com. Check it all out. It's an awesome website there, but there's RV sites for RVs. There's tent camping right on the river, cabins there. It is a beautiful park. And I fished down in that area for many, many years. I probably first started fishing there 30 years ago. But you can fish the river. Lake Livingston is a well-known fishing lake. If you don't like to fish, which I bet you do, but if you don't, it's a great place just to get away from the hustle bustle of the big city. You can call 936-277-5495. That's 936-277-5495 and make reservations. But first, go online there to riverratresort.com. Check it out. I want to tell you about a one-stop shop for everything related to game feeders and fish feeders, Ultrimatic Feeders. I've been using components and feeders from Ultrimatic Feeders for 20-something years, I guess. They have the remote, which you can remotely activate your feeder with, the timer, which is the most simple timer that I've ever found on a game feeder. And then the eliminator. Check these out. They are worked on actually on centrifugal force, and they seal off the corn supply so coons and squirrels can't get to the corn. Check them out. Ultrimatic Feeders, you can go online to ultrimaticfeeders.com.
Folks, let's talk a little outdoor cooking. Let me tell you about an electric smoker that I've been using for 15 years, I guess. Smokin Tex electric smokers. If you're tired of staying up all night keeping that wood fire burning when you're barbecuing, give Smokin Tex a try. They're made to last a lifetime. You can check them out at smokintex.com. That's SMOKINTEX.com. For seasonings, anything to do with outdoor cooking, all kind of jerky seasonings, sausage seasonings, Butcher Packer Supply. That's butcherpackersupply.com. I think the website is butcher-packer.com.
Friends, this segment is made possible by Platinum Cadillac and Chevrolet in Terrell, Texas. Stop by and visit with my buddy, Mr. Justin Rudd, and his team of experts, and let them put you in a new Chevy pickup or a Cadillac or whatever you might be in the market for. Also, the Choctaw Hunting Lodge up in southeast Oklahoma. Check them out at ChoctawHuntingLodge.com. Also made possible by Pyramyd Air, your one-stop shop for everything airgun related. Well, friends, I hope you've enjoyed our show thus far. I tell you, the catfishing is going strong all over. It's that time of the year, especially for the channel catfish. You know, they're going to be, the month of April is a good time to fish shallow with some punch bait, a number 6 or a number 4 treble hook, and I like to fish it under a cork, under a floater. You can catch a bunch of channel cats that way. And also the blue catfish, as David Hansen was talking about, that bite is still strong, especially down at Lake Tawakoni up in northeast Texas there, you know. But it's also going good in a lot of other places too. I want to talk to you about a way to have a whole bunch of fun and fish off the bank. Of course, if you read my newspaper columns and all that, I'm often fishing with pros, you know, professional guides, and sharing their information in my column, my newspaper columns that runs in a bunch of newspapers. But I also love to fish by myself, or off the bank, we should put it that way. There's many places that will offer that opportunity. State parks, regardless of where you're listening to the show, I guarantee you within a short drive you can find a good place to fish off the bank. Now, that could be a city park. A lot of these city parks are stocked with catfish, you know. Or, you know, a lot of lakes have multiple parks on. I'm going to give you a couple of places that I really like, but your opportunities are definitely not limited to these. There's all kind of other places that you can search out on your own. Now, RV parks, many of them have cabins too. If you don't have an RV, you can rent a cabin and spend a couple of nights there. Now, you can bring your boat. Most all the RV parks have boat ramps where you could slide your boat in the water and go fishing. But most of them have a fishing pier or bank fishing access that can be really, really good, especially April and May. I mean, that's when a lot of the catfish are going to be moving shallow. Not just catfish, but white bass. Especially in a few more weeks, there's going to be a shad hatch. And the sand bass, the white bass, and everything else are going to come in shallow at the break of day to feed on these gazillions of shad. So it's time. If you don't have a boat and you want to catch fish off the bank, it's time to do it. Now, let's concentrate on catfish just a little bit. I'm going to give you a couple of places, RV places that I know about too here in a minute that you can check out online. You might want to plan a place there or to a state park, wherever. But fishing under a cork is the way to go this time of year if you're fishing off the bank, in my opinion. And it's a really simple rigging. You're probably going to be fishing no more than 3-4 foot deep at the most, and close to the bank, especially in the early morning when those shad are in there. The catfish are there in numbers, and they're there throughout the day, especially the catfish. But I'll rig up a number 3 or number 4 channel treble hook, put a little split shot, just keep it down, and put a cork floater about 3 foot up, depending on water depth, but it's probably going to be 3 foot deep or something like that you're going to be fishing up close to the bank. And I like to use actually any kind of rod and reel, but spinning rig's pretty handy. And spool up with about, I don't know, you can use any kind of line. The catfish are not going to be that particular, maybe 15-pound test, something like that. And basically just get your bait out there. What kind of bait to use? You can use chicken liver, pork liver, night crawlers. A good punch bait's hard to beat. You've got it in a container there, and punch your treble hook down in there and pull it out, and you got your hook baited. Any kind of cut bait, you can use all kind of bait to catch channel cat. A tip that will help you fishing off the bank is carry some range cubes, or better yet, I don't know if you're camping with a family, they may not want you to carry the soured grain, but if you can put some maize or corn even and let it sour and have it in a good tight container, put that in around the area you're fishing, I guarantee you that will increase the quickness that the bite will start. Those catfish, they can sense that soured grain from a long ways, and you'll have a fishing fiesta right there if you do that. But just your bait, and don't give up too quick if you're fishing with punch bait. Start fishing. Fishing always gets better with punch bait the longer you fish. In other words, if you just fish 30 minutes and don't get a bite, it's time to move. Something's wrong. But if you can find a windy bank, that would help. If the wind's blowing, fish where the wind's blowing into the bank, and bait up with your punch bait. And then the longer that bait stays in the water, the more of it you put in there, the more scent is in there, and those catfish will hone in on that, and your action will pick up. Now, that's catfish. Most lakes have a healthy population of white bass, sand bass we call them up in North Texas. I have caught so many sand bass. I'll carry a little 4-foot cast net, which opens to 8 foot. Yeah, that's what it does. It's a 4-foot net that'll open to 8 foot. You don't have to do that, but you're going to need some shad. You could use minnows, but why not fish with the shad that's already up there next to the bank early in the morning this time of year? Throw that cast net a few times, get you a bucket full of shad, and I just use just any kind of a J hook, just a small. I like to use a case hardened hook that's pretty stout. Just hook that those little shad, a little weight, and cast it out and fish on the bottom. You'll catch sand bass, white bass, and catfish with that. Because after all those fish are up there feeding on shad that are up there. What they're doing is eating the zooplankton. I've learned this from Bill Dance years ago. I used to think the wind blew the shad up. That's not it. It kind of helps, I guess, but the main thing, the zooplankton that the little shad feed on is up there next to the bank. That's why they're there. And also they're spawning too, the shad are. So if it's a windy day with a lot of wave action, honestly, I've walked the bank and just picked the shad up that's washed up on the shore for bait. But it's better to have you a cast net. If you don't have a cast net, you can buy some minnows, and they'll work well. Maybe not quite as well as the shad. So that's a program that you can do, and you can camp if you're with your family. Y'all can have your RV out there, or you can rent a cabin. That's what I do a lot, and with my family. And then if you have fishermen in the family, they can get out there and fish with you. If not, you can be back by 9 o'clock in the morning with a big mess of fish for a fish fry. So that's a lot of fun, and it's coming up. So you can plan ahead. State parks, RV parks. At Lake Tawakoni, which is an awesome lake for catfish, stripers, hybrid stripers, sand bass, you name it. Wind Point Park is a great place. It's up there kind of the northeast corner of the lake. Not just easy access there, really. It's just right out of Lone Oak there's where it's at. WindPointParkTX.com. Now, there's a couple of 100 acres there. That's a good destination to plan you a spring camping trip that you can tent camp, RV, some beautiful RV hookups on the water, back in the woods there too. A lot of cabins, big cabins, small cabins. It's just a great place. A lot of deer. You can photograph deer there, and you will. There's just, I think they estimated a couple of 100 deer on that park. So check it out, WindPointParkTX.com. That's one spot. Now, if you're down in southeast Texas, down around Lake Livingston, another great place for camping and fishing is a River Rat RV Park right there on, I think it's Highway 19, right there near Riverside. This is down in the Lake Livingston area. It's a great spot. It used to be the old Bell's Camp. Fishermen that used to fish that area will know what I'm talking about, right on the Trinity there. Awesome catfishing. They've got a private lake pond there that's stocked with catfish, and boat ramp there that's private. I mean, you can launch in the calm water and then get out in the river. Always deep water access there. So they have some cabins there. It's a beautiful park. A lot of RV spaces, tent camping. A lot of people, like to set a tent camp up and just fish for a couple, 3 days there. So if you want to run a trot line, Lake Livingston, it's known for catfish. You can do that. So there's another opportunity if you're down in southeast Texas, just River Rat RV Park. Let's see, the website is River Rat Resort, riverratresort.com. Folks, I hope these tips helped you a little bit. It's time to start planning some spring camping, so why not incorporate some good fishing and some good fish fries into that camping trip? We've got another segment coming up here in just a bit. I thank you for listening today. We do try to cover the gamut, hunting, fishing, and camping, the whole bit here on Catfish Radio. So stay with us. We got a bunch more fun talk coming up. For about the past decade, I've been hunting editor for Airgun Hobbyist magazine. I think the only magazine devoted strictly to airgun shooting and hunting in the country. Well, in that length of time, I've learned quite a bit about big bore air guns and smaller calibers too. A spot to go to that if you're interested in air guns, you need to know about Pyramyd Air. The website is PYRAMYD, PyramydAir.com. They have anything and everything you need, from the guns themselves, the big bores or the smaller calibers, to the accessories. Just remember PyramydAir.com, and there's a number when you get on the website if you need to call and talk to somebody. Give them a buzz, and they can fill you in on little details that you might need to know about shooting or hunting with big bore air guns. While you're on the website there, I'd like you to check out the big bore air gun that I've done a great deal of hunting with. It's the Seneca Dragon Claw, 50 caliber, pressures up to 3,000 psi, and it looks like a conventional rifle. Wooden stock. I think you'll like the appearance, and I know you'll like the performance. It shoots not only bullets, but also air bolts as well, tipped with a broadhead. Check it out. It's the Seneca Dragon Claw.
The snowflakes fall as winter comes, and time just seems to fly.
Friends, this segment is brought to us by CVA Muzzleloaders. In my opinion, the very best muzzleloaders in the world, the ones that I shoot. You can check them out online, CVA.com. AGM Global Vision, maker of the Rattler and the Adder that I use. You can check them out online too, agmglobalvision.com. Kuby's Wild Game Processing and Kuby's Restaurant in Dallas. And VINEYARDMAX, maker of some awesome deer attractant and some very fine game feeders and fish feeders, located down in Nacogdoches, Texas. Check them out at vineyardmax.net. Well, friends, I hope you've enjoyed our show today half as much as I've enjoyed visiting with all of our guests. You know, in Campfire Talk, we mentioned that Larry's going to come back with us. He's back, and we're going to share a couple of funny things that's happened to us. You can imagine some of the adventures and misadventures that both of us have had kicking around the outdoors all these many years. But Larry is with it. Larry, there's an event I want you to tell about, a gala coming up, the Dallas Safari Club, this summer, I think, July, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. It's going to be our DSC Foundation's summer gala, and it's going to be held there at the Gaylord, just actually at Grapevine when you get right down to it. And I think it's like, I don't have a calendar handy, but I want to say it's like the 17th, 18th, 19th, somewhere along into there, that particular weekend. And DSC Foundation is the granting arm. Last year, money comes in and goes right back out to all kinds of highly vetted projects with wildlife, dealing with wildlife conservation, education, pretty much all over North America and in a few other places. And to learn more about that one, it's going to be great fun. It's going to be a consumer show there at the Gaylord, but we'll also have auctions and a whole bunch of other things going on to raise funds to go to highly vetted projects kind of thing. And they can learn more about that by going to www.dscf.org. And they can also see there kind of where the monies go to and some of the projects involved and how they can get involved to really help with wildlife conservation. So look forward to seeing everybody there. It's going to be a lot of fun.
You bet, Larry. I know that's going to be a fun event. So we talked about we were going to share a couple of, we do have time to share a couple of funny comical stories. Looking back, sometimes some of this stuff, when it really happened, I don't know how funny it really seemed at the time for me, but I know you've got a lifetime of adventures to recap there. Can you think of anything in particular?
Oh, my gosh. You know, we were talking earlier about, of course, we're always talking about hunting or fishing kind of thing, but one of my more interesting hunting stories happened several years ago. J. Wayne Fears from Alabama, fabulous writer, very, very dear friend who I unfortunately don't get to see very often, but he and his wife came down, the wife at the time, and she had never seen a buck rattled up, and so I set it up so that they came down at the right time when bucks were coming to Horns, South Texas. And my gosh, they got down and I rattled and I rattled and I rattled and I could not rattle up a buck. I tried places that in the past years I had always had numerous bucks respond. So it came down kind of to the last afternoon and I had this one little honey hole, little flat area kind of off of a Mesquite Creek bottom kind of thing. And everything was right. The temperature was right. The wind direction was right for there. So we slipped in there, and I put her just off to the side of me just a little bit, and Wayne kind of back behind me to where he could kind of take some pictures because I knew we were going to rattle up a buck right there. So, man, I started rattling. I hit the bushes, and I did everything right, just like I'd done in the past and had great success with, and had not rattled in a buck. And she was giving me a hard time as we were walking into this area. I have to add about, it's all just a Texas myth and, those kind of things. So I'm rattling up a storm, and finally I hear something coming. And I see moving in the brush, and I'm going, oh my God, thank you. Finally something is coming in. So I reach over, her name was Sherry, says, Sherry, get ready. He's going to come right there, right down that trail, get ready, kind of thing. And man, she gets her gun up and she's looking over the top of that scope, getting ready to where she can drop her head down and look through the scope. And I'm rattling. I go, oh man, thank goodness. And about that time, here comes a fighting rooster running out of the bushes. Jumps up on a stump right in front of us about 15 steps away and goes,
you won't forget that, man. A game rooster come out of nowhere.
Fears behind me started laughing so hard that he was rolling on the ground, and again with Sherry didn't know what to do, and then she started laughing. Of course, after that I started laughing as well too. So the first critter that I rattled up for that lady was a fighting rooster that somehow or other got lost out in the middle of nowhere, and he heard that commotion and he thought, my gosh, something's there. I better go have a look. Maybe somebody get me back to where I'm supposed to be.
Boy, Larry, if you could have had that on film, would that not have made the funniest video?
Well, in a way, thank God it wasn't on film because nobody can prove it now except for Fears and his ex-wife and me.
Yeah, right. It's one of those things that it happens. It happened, but it's hard to imagine somebody. It really who knows what that rooster was thinking? I mean,
I have no idea. We were in the middle of a big old ranch, and how he got there, I had no earthly idea.
There is
either.
no telling. Yeah,
he was there then.
Boy, and you'll never forget it, nor will they. Well, one time, Larry, I was invited by a good friend to travel to the Umpcompadre National Forest.
Oh yeah,
in Colorado. Now this has been 20 years ago plus. I don't know, 25 maybe, long time ago. Well, so they had hunted this particular area, deer. It's a mule deer hunt's what we were doing. Right. My buddy and his father-in-law and one other friend. I forget who his other friend was, but there was three of them and me and Joe Dunham, a good friend of mine. Yes, so they were going to set up camp like they did every year, right there at the same campsite, and it's public land up there, so that we were on the Uncompadre National Forest there. So it's all set up, and these people, they drew me a map, and I'd never been there. But it's a long way from Texas to the Uncompadre, so we had a long drive, and we drove straight through. I'm going to tell you, Joe and I did, we were somewhat tired of watching the white lines roll through by the time we got up there. I can
imagine.
And we were following maps, too. There was no GPS. I mean, I thought, we drove right to this campsite, and the maps, they sketched it off, and they were that good, which was a feat in itself, looking back on it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they got there after dark. Here's the funny part. It's funny now. So I was tired. Joe was tired. And they said, okay, boys, here's your, area of the tent. Had a big old, one room, big old white tent, canvas tent up there with a wood stove in it. So they had bunks for me and Joe, and we got put our sleeping bags down. So they had a big old campfire going out in front there, and they said, get settled in and come on out here and join us, And so I pulled out there and pulled up a lawn chair and, half mesmerized by that fire, about half asleep, yes. Sitting there. And I said, man, I tell you what, I need some water. Been driving all day, and I was probably dehydrated, to be honest with you. I didn't stop to drink any water, And old Harold, my buddy, he was also a fishing guide at Texoma for a long time. So Harold says, I said, you got any water? And had one of these coffee mugs, one of these big coffee mugs I did. He said, yeah, it's in that plastic 5-gallon jug right behind the tent back on. It's dark out there, I don't know how I found it, but I stumbled back there and found that plastic jug and poured up about half a mug of that water, I thought, and then wandered back around to my chair and sat down, half comatose from from lack of sleep and driving all day, and I set it down. Luckily, I set it down beside my chair between me and Harold.
Right.
And Harold, I saw him looking and sniffing, and he looked. I thought, what the heck's going on? What's he up to over there? He looked down at that. He said, Luke, he said, don't drink that. And I said, well, is it bad water? He said, no, it's gasoline. It was.
Oh my gosh!
They had,
thank goodness, Luke,
for their generator. Well, I didn't. They had water, 5-gallon water jugs. It was dark, and I just poured up. He didn't tell me that one of them had gas in it. I'm sitting there about 10 feet from a roaring campfire with a mug full of gasoline. And I swear to goodness, there was nothing, no other drinks were involved. That was water. I thought it was water. But yeah, I mean, you would just had to been there. And every time I see Harold, I said, Harold, you remember the time you saved me from drinking gasoline? He laughed. So, Larry, I guess the moral of this story is, and I had another old buddy one time, he says, anything can and often does happen in the great outdoors.
You know what it does. Thank God you didn't take a swallow.
Oh.
You have to spit it out because you just probably spit it right toward the campfire.
I'd have spit it in the fire, and then what would have happened? Oh my gosh. I get goosebumps just thinking about that night. But bottom line, two deer, little old basket rack mule deer were killed on that hunt, but it was a fun deal. We had a great time up there.
Oh man, you're right. It has nothing to do with the size of the animal or in terms of antlers or horn or body or even the size of the fish that makes the hunting or the fishing trip. It's memories kind of such as that happened to you and friends that you go with.
That's right. Well, Larry, thank you for coming back in our show today and sharing some funny happenings. But rooster and the glass that should have been water. That was we could wrap up the rest of our probably all day telling other stories. Who knows? We might tell another couple of funny ones next time or something.
I think that would be a blast, Luke. Thank you so much for allowing me to come back.
Folks, that about wraps our show up for this week. I've enjoyed being with you, and I hope you've had a good time, too. And, folks, we're also brought to you by the Choctaw Hunting Lodge up in southeast Oklahoma, located about, 45 minutes west of Hugo, Oklahoma, owned by the Choctaw Nation. It's about 45,000 acres of awesome mountain, country, hills, valleys, loaded with game. Lots of eastern turkey, and they do eastern turkey hunts if you're looking for a spot to hunt turkey in the spring. Also, I want to remind you about the Seneca 50 caliber Dragon Claw that shoots bullets and pellets. And by pellets, I'm talking about 200 and 210 grain lead, chunks of lead. It's a big bore air gun that I use. Check out the Seneca Dragon Claw there at PyramydAir.com.